Doctor, doctor, doctor. The Screen Companion presents Resuscitating the Ninth Doctor, celebrating Christopher Eccleston's run of Doctor Who. We're back, resuscitating the Ninth Doctor, and boy, do I feel like I need something to bring me back to life after this group of episodes.
You weren't feeling them?
No, I wasn't. So we did episode 3, 4, 5, and I think my enjoyment decreased as I went along. How about you, John?
I think it increased, and not because the episodes got better. I just think that my least favorite one started first.
Christopher Eccleston's third episode, The Unquiet Dead, brings the Doctor and Rose to Cardiff, Wales, on Christmas Eve, 1869. There they meet Charles Dickens, a psychic funeral parlor helper, and corpses reanimating thanks to gaseous aliens called the Gelth. There'll be more gas in the next episode.
This is not the last time we'll be saying gaseous aliens.
But luckily, these aliens aren't of the fart variety. How do you feel about the show going into the past for episode 3?
I think it was the right decision. You go through space-time, you gotta go through space. They went to the future, so it's time to go to the past.
Well, and the Doctor even says it at the very beginning. Logically, that makes sense, but it's not a very inspired choice on his part or the writers.
They do go, 5 billion years into the future, only to go 100 years or so in the past.
It feels like going to a car show. Hey, look what this model can do. We went to the future, we went to the past. Please like us.
Please.
Speaking of like, did you like the supporting cast? Written well enough so it doesn't just feel like the Doctor and Rose show?
No, I don't think they were. They just felt there. Charles Dickens was just kind of there. I think they just wanted Dickens in the episode, and that's what it felt like. Not an organic story. Just, we want Charles Dickens.
What do you know about that, Hobgoblin? Projection on glass. I suppose who put you up to it? Yeah, mate, not now, thanks. Oh, you! Follow that hearse! Wait, can't do that, sir! Why not? Why not? I'll give you a very good reason why not, because this is my coach!
Well, get in then! Come on, you're losing them!
Everything in order, Mr. Dickens? No, it is not!
What did he say? Dickens?
Yes?
Charles Dickens?
Yes?
The Charles Dickens?
Should I remove the gentleman, sir?
Charles Dickens, you're brilliant, you are. Completely 100% brilliant. I've had them all. Great Expectations, Oliver Twist. You're a genius.
You want me to get rid of him, sir?
No, I think he can stay.
And what is it when they bring in these historical figures? I'm reminded of Matt Smith's era when they brought in Van Gogh. What's up with these depressed white guys?
I don't know. I think it's just the writers are depressed white guys at this point.
I noticed that Dickens gets time to himself. That perspective shift, where neither the Doctor nor Rose are present, that feels detrimental when it's only the third episode.
Yeah.
And our leads are still so new.
You're not establishing their relationship. And the last episode was about them fighting. So, we haven't even seen them get along yet.
And at least the first half of the season, I'm going to say, should stick to the main pair. Almost like emergency GPS.
Mm-hmm.
I want every scene told from their perspective until I get used to them, until they get used to each other. And I don't believe episode 3 is long enough. Rate for me, John, this story from 1 to 5.
I wasn't as offended by it, but I'm going to give it a full on 2.
Sir, we agree once again. I think we've agreed on all of them so far.
Oh no, we got to fight.
No, it's okay. We can be simpatico every now and then. I think the little details don't add up for me, and I don't quite believe the logic of the plot.
It's just gas aliens. Okay.
Well, that, and did you notice the characters at a certain point make the connection between the aliens and their gas lamps in the funeral parlor? Because isn't part of the fun in these types of sci-fi/fantasy stories, you get to put yourself into the dilemma and go, oh, what would I do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did it strike you as odd that once they made that connection with the gas, why didn't anybody try turning off all the gas?
I don't know. That's probably a full-on plot hole, but I'm going to pretend that maybe they don't know how the gas works. Dickens was an atheist, basically, but the rest of them were full-on like, oh, they're zombies. It's voodoo, screw it. We're simple folk who don't know how gas lights work.
But by this point, the doctor was there, and he pointed out, hey, look, they went back into the lamps. And later, Dickens is able to turn up the gas, so wouldn't they also be able to have turned it off?
Yeah, I think that's a plot hole.
But let's go to the other side for a moment. What was your favorite aspect of this episode?
I did like the way Dickens was man of science. It was a good get his heart back into it story, even if the doctor gleefully was like, oh, he'll be dead in a year, he's not writing any of this.
I must confess, I began to write it down as a plot hole when the doctor said it was 1860, and then I could clearly see a poster that said it was 1869. And then once they brought that detail into the episode and it was on purpose, I had to put my pencil down like,
Ah,
okay, that was me trying to be clever, you win.
they got you. It was probably a real screw-up in the prop department, and that was like a reshoot.
I'm going to say, I think the cold open is great. It starts at the mortuary with a guy getting strangled to death by his dead grandmother. The mortician exclaims, not another one!
Not again!
So we get a tease right off the bat that this isn't the first stiff to reanimate. The dead lady busts out onto the street, and we get a crane shot that pushes in on her yelling, glowing face. Wonderful! But John, what was your biggest problem with The Unquiet Dead?
A lot of classic Who, and this is just like it, they come up with a fantasy thing they want to do, and then reverse engineers the science mumbo-jumbo of it. The dead gassy bodies becoming zombies thing, I feel like they could have done something better. They do come up with a better zombie reason later in the series, too.
When?
It's called The Empty Child.
Oh, yeah.
With the nanobots.
That's true. That story and this one, they are basically a new spin on zombies. Yeah, I'm looking ahead to that. I'm looking forward to it.
Agreed, that's, I think, my favorite story of the first season.
Here's another plot hole, possibly. So, the aliens, they turn out to be invaders, and they're using this psychic lady that works at the mortuary as the conduit between worlds or universes, and this is how they're gonna take over the Earth. They don't seem very worried by the fact that essentially, like you and I just did a bridge too far for the Screen Companion, she's the bridge. But they seem so confident that they're going to be able to take over the world. Couldn't somebody just come up with a gun and shoot that lady in the face and then it's over?
Yeah, easily.
Or burn her to death or something?
I think she was already dead to begin with, as soon as she stepped into the situation, right?
True, but the resolution of that is them filling the building full of gas, and then that dead lady has enough willpower left to light a match and kill the connection.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I guess it just depends on her being there in that archway to serve as the bridge. If I were the aliens doing an after-action report once they were stymied, I'd be like, let's look at our plan again, folks. Anybody want to tell me what was wrong with it? Sir, it might have been that our plan hinged on one person staying alive long enough for possibly millions of us to come through the gateway.
Yeah. It's the zombie invasion of, like, we're all gonna go through the window, boys. Well, they boarded up the window. I guess we'll just wander around the front yard.
It's one lady, so the threat feels so tiny.
It's a very tiny threat. They're like, we're gonna invade the Earth, but they're just a threat to the people in the room.
Yeah.
Which the doctor didn't care about, which was a weird thing. He said she died. He gleefully, like, oh, she died earlier. We don't have to save her. Which might be a lie on his part, just to get out of the situation.
He's got this weird dichotomy. He cares about races. Like in this episode, before the aliens turn out to be evil, he wants to help them. On an individual level, he really doesn't care about most folks.
No, he doesn't care at all.
Even though it's a period piece, I'm already feeling the budget limitations here. Half the episode takes place at the mortuary. Before they leave the TARDIS to traipse around 19th century Wales, the Doctor tells Rose to go to the wardrobe room and pick out some period-appropriate clothing. Of course, we don't get to see her go there.
No, because it's, 3 lefts, a right, down the hall, 4 more lefts.
I would have liked to have seen that.
Yeah, obviously we want to see more of the TARDIS.
Do they show any other part of the TARDIS this whole season?
No, I think we have to wait till, like, Matt Smith's first or second season to see more of the TARDIS.
It's like Star Trek spending all their time on the bridge and you only hear about engineering and sickbay.
Yeah.
Really? What the heck's up with that?
I was like, Jordy, shouldn't you be down in engineering? I'm like, I haven't built that set yet, so I'm going to hang on to the bridge.
It's made worse by... This is Eccleston's entire run, this one season.
Mm-hmm.
And all these things they could have done with him or with the production around him. So many missed opportunities.
Agreed. That's the point of this, right?
That's true. That's true. And as we get into the following episodes, even when I think the show really loses it, he's always good. What do you think is the Ninth Doctor's darkest moment in this episode?
Just how willy-nilly he's okay with all the humans dying. Oh, Dickens will be dead in a year, or the girl's dead as soon as she walked in. He didn't even ask where the corpses came from. We, as the audience, knew, but I don't think he cared. It'd be like, that man was too young to die and he looks healthy. But he never asked that. He's a genius. he never asked what killed the guy.
I thought it was messed up that when they still want to help the aliens before they're revealed to be invaders, the psychic speaks up and says, yeah, I want to be part of this plan. I want to help them to cross over because they're angels. And they've been speaking to me all my life. Not once does the Doctor say to her, well, actually, they're not angels. I think he does that because she's on his side, so he doesn't want to screw that up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I can totally see that. Just like, placate her. Just placate her.
He's willing to fight with Charles Dickens over the science, but when the psychic wants to claim it's angels, he's like, yeah, sure, it's angels.
Yeah, whatever.
A detail I'd like to point out. When the threat of corpses running amok reaches a fever pitch, Rose says to the Doctor, but there's no record of a bunch of dead people walking around. He replies, time's in flux. It could change like that. Nothing is safe. Remember that. Except... in Father's Day, later on this season, doesn't he expressly talk about fixed points in time that can't be changed?
Yeah. And they get attacked by other dimension bats.
You would think they're writing next week's episode while they're shooting this one.
Yeah. That's what it feels like, right? Shouldn't they have all the scripts done before going to production?
Well, the usual excuse is, at least in American television, we're doing 22 to 26 episodes, and this was 10, 15 years ago when TV was still like that. But that makes a little more sense. The British side of things, they typically do 6 or 7 in a season, or this one is 13. I don't think they can use that excuse.
Full year's worth of work is get all the writing done, send it to production, post, air.
At least the major plot points, I want Russell T. Davies to figure out before it goes to the writer's room. Have him explain it to people. Okay, this is how time travel, at least the biggest laws of it, this is how it works, okay? So that way we stay consistent. And I don't think he did any of that.
It felt like hand-waving so that the audience wouldn't be like, well, clearly they win because there's no record of zombies tramping around.
Are there any little details you'd like to mention?
I don't know why. I thought it was funny at the beginning of the episode when Dickens is telling a Christmas story. It felt lazy on his part of like, it was a ghost and it looked like, holy crap, it looked like that. And he just pointed at the dead lady in the audience.
How do you feel about the Doctor not changing his clothes to be period accurate?
I like it. It's the Doctor. He's got to have the look. That's one of the big things established. They have the same outfit all the time. So you got to keep him that way.
It establishes his stubbornness, I suppose, or his ego.
Yeah.
But as we'll get into, the plots can get so ridiculous. I need every possible detail I can get to help me believe in any of this stuff. And when you have Rose dressed appropriately, and she's walking around on a snowy street next to a guy who doesn't look like he belongs there, and nobody's calling him out on it, it's like, oh, come on.
Just like a U-boat captain.
Yeah.
I believe was one of the jokes they said.
But moving on. John, what's the plot of the 4th episode, Aliens of London?
After all the gallivanting, the Doctor returns Rose to her own timeline to discover that it has not been 12 hours, but 12 months. During the family reunion / anger of the situation, an alien crashes through Big Ben and lands in the Thames.
How do you feel about the humor in this episode?
Well, we already mentioned gas aliens.
Let's expand on that.
The Sazine couldn't fit in their human skins properly. It felt childish. I'm going to just say childish. Because it was all basically fart jokes and fat jokes.
If we forget the farting for a moment, do you think the villains are otherwise compelling?
Yeah, I think so. I think they definitely struck a chord. I've seen videos of a Slitheen or two at a Comic-Con.
I think this might be the first time where you and I diverge here. What rating would you give this from 1 to 5?
I'm going to give it the sub 3, not quite the 2, because I want to rate it higher than the Unquiet did.
This was painful for me to watch. I give it a 1. I don't buy any of the details concerning the portrayal of the government, especially the world. It's presented like this is the first public appearance of aliens, and yet not a single foreign rep shows up. And the UK authorities don't immediately shoot or arrest the Doctor when he shows up where he doesn't belong.
He's an unknown man in the middle of the Capitol building that's supposed to be secure, and they immediately start following his orders. It's weird.
It's all too convenient so the story can move along. Between the aliens farting and oversimplifying the UK's response to a UFO event, I think this is for kids ages 10 and under.
I could see that. The aliens also had literal baby faces, with the giant eyes and the puffy cheeks.
That being said, though, what was your favorite moment this episode?
Every time they tried to get sinister. When they take off, when the mystery was still there, the light from the forehead, and then somebody dies.
That was okay at first. I like that sound effect. That warble.
Wow.
You ever watch Adventure Time?
No, I heard it's good.
Oh. Well, there's no point in making a reference then.
Do it anyway. Do it anyway. People listen. Some watch Adventure Time.
No, John, I don't want to tread where you can't come with me. All I'll say is, it reminds me of King Worm.
Okay.
While I don't like any overall story beat, I did like a few scenes. One of them is when Mickey barges into Rose's flat. No one told him she was back. And she was gone so long, everyone accused Mickey of murdering her.
Mm-hmm.
He's the Millhouse of Doctor Who. And when they had their awkward little reunion, she says, "Have you been seeing anyone?" And he says, "No. Mainly because everyone thinks I murdered you."
It's hard to get a date when you're a suspected murderer.
Any other criticisms worth mentioning?
The farts is really it. They definitely could have figured something else out there. And I don't think it comes up again. One of these characters shows up again, but she's not all farty.
I think they do drop that after a while, but that doesn't make sense because they do it so much here. I'm not sure they explain why they stop farting.
Yeah.
It happens, like at least half a dozen times this episode?
At least. Every scene is interrupted by a fart, and then they have to explain the fart.
I gotta give them credit. It does factor into the plot, but if they had reduced that to maybe 3 farts in the whole 2-parter, that would have been enough.
Agreed.
Last episode, the TARDIS sent them to 1869 when the Doctor wanted 1860. Then this episode, instead of being gone 12 hours, they return Rose home 12 months later. I think the lack of control on the Doctor's part has more to do with narrative convenience than anything else.
It is a good narrative. It's a better narrative than them just popping back and having nothing to do for the first act. And then I think they try to explain it later of how it takes them where they need to be, not where they want to go.
I still don't quite buy that.
Even then, that's still a plot convenience thing. It's not like some technicality of just like, oh, our hands are tied under the writing aspect.
It's like if you were a pilot, would you want to fly a plane that wouldn't land where you want it to land half the time?
Well, I tried to fly to New York, but this plane really needed me in Hawaii.
Yeah, in the middle of a wildfire.
Yeah, in the middle of a wildfire.
Is Aliens of London science fiction or science fantasy?
This is science fiction. Government conspiracies and body snatching. This is science fiction.
The broadest strokes, I will agree with you, yeah. So this is a third of the way into the first season. Do you feel the Ninth Doctor and Rose are developed as far as they should be this far into the show?
I would almost argue that they're developed further than they should be. They're running around. They're being snarky old friends with each other. We've only really spent 2 days together.
Whatever the nature of their relationship at this point, if you take all the little personal moments between them in the previous episodes, it doesn't amount to a heck of a lot.
All she's really seen of him is his cavalier attitude with people dying of just like, all right.
And in the 5th episode, World War III, the Doctor and Rose are looking to stop the Slitheen from starting a nuclear war in order to turn the Earth into radioactive slag that the aliens can sell for space fuel. Do you think this needed to be a 2-parter?
No. I think they could have edited it down. A lot of both these episodes, the danger was the aliens creeping closer. Took up a lot of screen time. Maybe you just run away a lot, cut out 45 of the fart jokes, and you got yourself down to 1 episode.
I think some people are going to be pissed off with me here, and they'll probably say I'm too boring. Keeping what we can of what exists in this 2-parter. So let's say the plot with the Slitheen starting a nuclear war. Make that this episode. But the previous episode, if they had devoted a whole episode on Rose just coming back after spending 48 hours with the Doctor, there's so much dramatic gold there between her and Mickey, her and her mom that hadn't heard from her in a year, thought she was dead. But they just gloss over it in this two-parter.
The hours I've sat here, days and weeks and months, all on my own. I thought you were dead. And where were you? Travelling. What the hell does that mean, travelling? That's no sort of answer. You ask her. She won't tell me. That's all she says. Travelling.
That's what I was doing.
Well, your passport's still in the drawer. It's just one lie after another.
I meant to phone. I really did. I forgot.
What, for a year? You forgot for a year? And I am left sitting here. I just don't believe you. Why won't you tell me where you've been?
Actually, it's my fault. I'd sort of employed Rose as my companion.
When you say companion, is this a sexual relationship?
No.
Then what is it? Because you waltz in here all charm and smiles, and the next thing I know, she vanishes off the face of the earth. How old are you then? 40? 45? What'd you find her on the internet? Go online and pretend you're a doctor.
I am a doctor.
Prove it. Stitch this, mate.
Do you think that could have worked? An episode that didn't have some greater sci-fi plot. It was just the ramifications of being the Doctor's companion and dealing with the mundanity of home life.
That could have worked a lot better. I think they bring it up in future episodes with other doctors and companions, maybe. Keeping this to a drama about that would have worked. And you could just shove all the stuff you wanted to set up in this episode into the background. We don't need to be in 10 Downing Street with all that going down. That could just be happening on the news in the background.
Oh, yeah. Go with me here for a second.
Okay.
I'm realizing I don't have a TARDIS and we can't rewrite this show, John, but have that plot happening in the background. The Doctor says, let me give you a week, hang out with your mom, we'll reconnect.
Mm-hmm.
And so he goes off and deals with the Slovene. And then the A story is Rose and her mom, Jackie. And Jackie's like, I don't want you leaving this house. You just came back. Promise me you won't go. And Rose is like, but Mom, I like traveling through time and space so much, I don't know if I can do that.
Is that a British accent, sir? We'll call it Cockney. It's an unoffensive Cockney accent.
I just want a shot of her at the window, looking all gloomy, and it's raining outside. And then maybe across the river there's an explosion and she sees the TARDIS flying around. And she's like, I want to go out there.
Oh, I should have been in that explosion.
Yeah, and then Jackie's like, don't you dare. And maybe it cuts to them playing Monopoly or something. Jackie's like, isn't this fun? Isn't it all right? Aren't you glad you're back?
It's a Monopoly. It's more fun than watching the Earth burn from space.
Because really, I'm joking about it, but at the same time, I really do believe if we had like a full scene between mother and daughter where Rose has to admit, I love you, Mom, but I love hanging out with the Doctor more. And how Jackie would react to that. Does it crush her? Does she ultimately understand? We could really get some crime moments out of that.
Easily. That's, I don't want to call it basic, but that's standard. That's part of growing up. His child's got to spread her wings, right? I guess the non-sci-fi equivalent was she's going to go backpacking across Europe, basically. Only it's backpacking across time and space. But it's still the same, Mom, I got to get out of this house. I got to go explore. Even without the sci-fi elements, it's still something that very real could happen.
Ignoring the actual story of this two-parter, do you think it was a good idea to do a multi-part story this soon into the season?
I don't know if I have an answer for that, because having watched all of Russell T Davies' seasons, it was always formula he followed, where he always had a two-parter early and a two-parter late every season. Maybe it wasn't the best idea, but maybe it was. What do you think?
Unfortunately, he set up this paradigm that every subsequent head writer that took over, they kept up with it in the same way that I think Star Trek suffered because each subsequent show just tried to be the original show again, having adventures, being on a bridge, except for Deep Space Nine. But same thing with this. Every episode is some world-ending event. They do two-parters. Do they ever do like a three-parter, a four-parter, a five-parter?
I want to say Jodie Whittaker's last season was all one continuous storyline through like 7 or 8 episodes.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But I don't know if that should count because the writing was awful. As good as she was also amazing. The writing was always awful for her.
And there's precedent. If you go back to the original show, the 60s continuity, they had whole seasons, I believe, that were focused around one thing, like the Key to Time series with Tom Baker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where he meets Romana, the Lady Time Lord. Did you watch any of that?
No. I saw City of Death. I didn't see the Key to Time.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of the overall story, but there were definitely some good episodes in there. 1 to 5 rating time, John. What do you give this one?
I'm just going to give it a 3, only because I thought it was the best of the 3 episodes we watched.
No kidding. Huh. I'm jealous. If I could enjoy this more like you did, I would like that.
I think it was just a comparison because I wasn't a huge fan of Unquiet Dead.
Well, I wasn't a huge fan of that one either. I'm going to give this another 1 for all the same reasons as Aliens of London.
That's fair. I'm not going to argue that with you.
There's always a risk with direct continuations. If you hated the first chapter, chances are good you won't like the conclusion much more.
They're going to turn it around on you successfully.
But what was your favorite moment this episode?
When the police Slazine was trying to kill Jackie in the apartment, and the doctor was on the phone, the resolution was to be smart. He kept asking them to just yell out random facts about it so he could think about a way to defeat the Slazine.
Right, if we're going to find their weakness, we need to find out where they're from. Which planet? So, judging by their basic shape, that narrows it down to 5,000 planets within travelling distance. What else do we know about them? Information!
They're green.
Yep, narrows it down.
A good sense of smell.
Narrows it down.
They can smell adrenaline.
Narrows it down.
The pig technology.
Narrows it down.
The spaceship in the Thames, you said slipstream engine?
Narrows it down.
They hunt like it's a ritual.
Narrows it down.
Wait a minute. Did you notice? When they fart, if you'll pardon the word, it doesn't just smell like a fart, if you'll pardon the word. It's something else. What is it? It's more like, bad breath. That's it!
Calcium decay, now that narrows it down. Calcium phosphate, organic calcium, living calcium, creatures made out of living calcium. What else? What else? Hyphenated surname. Yes! That narrows it down to one planet. Raxicoricofallapatorius!
Calcium-based, so throwing vinegar on him would have a very negative effect. And it did. They threw pickled juice on him and he exploded. It's just the whole process of he outthought a monster he wasn't even in the room with.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. It's a good example of his smarts.
Mm-hmm.
I'll admit the story got a little more tolerable for me once Jackie and Mickey were on one end of the conversation and Doctor and Rose were on the other end working together. Of course, the way Mickey can do all the tech stuff he does, it's so absurd, but the dynamic was cool. I just wish it had been on a vastly reduced scale. Some neighborhood problem instead of aliens and missiles.
Yeah.
And hacking into a government system from a PC. Using the same password that the doctor gave Mickey and over again, that's really bad security.
Buffalo. I don't want to defend the episode because I think we're agreed that it's not its best, but I know in the 60s, the nuclear launch codes were like 0000 or something like that. And I think at one point, the Russians found that out and were like, that's got to be a joke. I think we're getting counterintelligence right now.
That would be the best way to screw with their heads.
Yeah.
Because then if they captured nuclear scientists and interrogated them and were like, what's the code? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That can't be the code. That's the code to my luggage.
Yeah. What do you think is the darkest Ninth Doctor moment in this episode?
When he shot the missile at the place, there was no attempt to tell anybody who was about to get hit by a missile that a missile was coming.
Except for the aliens. Don't all the humans somehow miraculously get out of there in time?
They do. I think they figure out on their own that a missile's coming, but the Doctor's just like, we're safe in this little box. We'll be fine.
It's not the darkest or even a dark moment. I think it's more an example of the Doctor being snarky. I liked it when Mickey got into the TARDIS and he's watching the Doctor do some repairs and he keeps hassling him about what he's doing. And the Doctor goes, "If I began to explain, would you understand?" And Mickey says, "I suppose not." And the Doctor says, "Then shut it."
He hates him, yeah. Ricky the idiot. The world is in your hands. He needed him to perform exactly, and he still got in that last jab.
But that was a nice moment between them at the end, when the Doctor invites Mickey to join them, and Mickey says, "No, I can't handle it." The Doctor helps him save face in front of Rose by saying it was the Doctor's idea not to bring Mickey along.
He's like, no, he's not allowed in the TARDIS.
The Doctor's a very bittersweet character, and I don't mind it being like 80% bitter, but every now and then I need a little sweetness, and I think that was it here. Any other little details that stuck out to you in World War III?
A lot of the episode was CG Celine running.
Oh man, when they're running between rooms and going through the hallways, I got a Benny Hill vibe.
Yeah, I kind of got that too. They had that wide shot set up, and you could tell the filming was just, okay, actors run left. All right, run right. All right, now we're going to cut that into 20 minutes of story.
It wasn't so obvious that they run out of frame and then come back into frame and run the other direction. But they do go to the left, and then 10, 15 minutes later, then you see them run the other direction. They do a little bit of that. I would like to point out, the Doctor said that Harriet Jones, the MP, she was going to have 3 terms as Prime Minister.
I think Tennant's first episode, he gets her impeached? I don't know what the British term would be. He starts the ball rolling on ending her reign as Prime Minister.
Yeah, man, you know, what's up with more of these inconsistencies, Russell?
Come on!
Based on how far we've come into this rewatch, are you excited going into the next batch of episodes?
Yes and no.
Again, pretend for a moment that you don't already know what's coming.
Pretending that I don't know what's coming, I'm going to say I'm tempered, I'm going to give it a chance. Knowing what's coming, I'm very excited because I think the next one is one of my favorite episodes in the whole show.
I think this is the creative nadir of this season. And I guess that's a good thing because you don't want your first episode to suck, and you definitely don't want your finale to suck. If you're going to suck the most, do it somewhere in between those spots. So if I was totally new to the show after the slog of these 3 episodes, I think I would just say, man, it can only go up from here. And luckily it does. Do you have any final words about these 3 episodes?
As good as we agree that the 2-parter wasn't, it was fun that he's trying to introduce new alien species.
Yeah, farting aside.
Yeah, farting aside.
That's true. At least he's not trying to completely live off the bones of the previous series. But I wonder how much of that was a goal of his and how much of it might have been rights issues.
I don't know. I think as a writer, he only really concentrated on 3 or 4 carryover type of characters. Because he only brought in, I want to say, the Daleks, the Cybermen, the Master, and the Centaurans, the war people.
Yeah. And the Autons in the first episode.
Yeah, you did mention that they were a holdover, and I completely forgot about that.